Sitting in the bustling New York airport, Max Trond felt a mixture of exhaustion and anticipation weighing heavily on him. The culmination of days spent negotiating the sale of the pharmaceutical company, a business venture he co-owned with his sisters, had left him mentally drained. Yet, the promise of a significant financial gain buoyed his spirits, offering a glimmer of hope for a more comfortable future for his family. As he observed the flurry of activity around him, the hurried footsteps, the announcements over the intercom, the clusters of travelers rushing to their gates, Max couldn't shake the nagging feeling of unease that lingered at the back of his mind. Despite the impending windfall from the sale, uncertainty gnawed at him, casting a shadow over his thoughts. The prospect of returning home to his wife, Camila, and their twin daughters, who were both enrolled in college, should have brought him comfort. However, Max hesitated to contact Camila, unsure of how to explain the delay in his return. The weight of unspoken words hung heavy on his shoulders as he sat at the airport bar, nursing a gin and tonic, his mind consumed by thoughts of the impending journey home. As the boarding process commenced, Max found himself anxiously watching the digital display, his heart sinking with each passing moment. Despite being third on the waiting list for the last flight to Charlotte, the odds of securing a seat seemed increasingly slim. The uncertainty gnawed at him, a knot of tension tightening in his chest as he contemplated the possibility of spending another night in the unfamiliar confines of a hotel room. Then, as if by some stroke of providence, Max's name flickered to life on the waiting list, signaling the availability of a seat. A surge of relief washed over him, mingled with a sense of urgency as he settled his tab and hastily gathered his belongings. With a quick nod to the bartender, a silent acknowledgement of the fortuitous turn of events, Max dashed towards the gate, his pulse quickening with each step. Receiving his boarding pass from the gate agent, Max felt a surge of adrenaline course through him as he stepped onto the plane. Finding his first-class seat, he sank into the plush upholstery, a wave of exhaustion washing over him. Closing his eyes, he allowed himself to relax, the rhythmic hum of the plane's engines lulling him into a fitful sleep. The abrupt jolt of landing roused Max from his slumber, and he blinked away the remnants of sleep as he disembarked from the plane. Weary and disoriented, he made his way to the taxi stand, the anticipation of finally returning home mingling with the weariness that clung to his bones. As the taxi pulled up to the familiar site of his house, Max's fatigue gave way to a surge of apprehension. Parked in the driveway was a sleek gold Mercedes, an incongruous presence that sent a shiver down his spine. Despite the late hour, the house appeared dark and silent, adding to the sense of foreboding that gripped him. Entering the dimly lit foyer, Max's footsteps echoed hollowly against the tiled floor as he made his way to the staircase. Each step felt heavier than the last, his mind racing with a myriad of unsettling possibilities. Pushing open the door to their bedroom, he was met with an eerie stillness that seemed to suffuse the room, leaving him feeling strangely exposed. The sight that greeted him, a vacant room bathed in the soft glow of moonlight streaming through the window, sent a chill down his spine. His heart pounding in his chest, Max approached the closed door at the far end of the room, a sense of trepidation tightening its grip on him with each passing moment. Max's heart felt like it had been gripped by an icy hand as he stood in the doorway, his mind struggling to comprehend the scene before him. The sight of Camila, his beloved wife, entwined with another man in their marital bed, sent shockwaves of disbelief and betrayal coursing through him. It was a scene he never could have imagined, and one that shattered the foundation of trust and security he had built with Camila over the years. As he gazed at Camila's peaceful expression in sleep, a pang of longing and sorrow shot through Max. Her gentle snoring, a sound he had once found comforting and reassuring, now felt like a cruel mockery of their shared intimacy. It was a painful reminder of the love and trust that had been broken in an instant. The stranger lying beside Camila appeared content in his slumber, oblivious to the devastation he had caused. Max's initial shock gave way to a surge of anger and resentment towards this man, who had invaded his home and his marriage. He fought the urge to lash out physically, knowing that such actions would only compound the pain and lead to regret. Instead, Max's mind raced with thoughts of how to handle the situation. He considered confronting Camila and the stranger, demanding answers and explanations for their betrayal. But a voice of reason whispered in his mind, reminding him of the potential consequences of such a confrontation. With a heavy heart, Max reached for his phone and began discreetly taking photographs of the scene before him. Each snapshot captured the painful reality of his wife's infidelity, serving as irrefutable evidence of her betrayal. He also gathered the stranger's clothes, a tangible reminder of the intrusion into his life and his home. As he stood there, grappling with the magnitude of what he had discovered, Max made a decision. He would not succumb to the chaos and anger swirling inside him. Instead, he would confront this betrayal with dignity and resolve, seeking a path forward that would lead to healing and closure. Leaving the bedroom, Max felt a profound sense of loss and betrayal weighing heavily on his shoulders. The love and trust he had once shared with Camila now felt like distant memories, shattered by her infidelity. Yet, amidst the pain and heartache, a flicker of determination burned within Max's soul. He would navigate this storm of emotions with grace and strength, forging a new path forward, one that would ultimately lead him to healing and redemption. As the morning light crept through the curtains, casting intricate patterns across the bedroom floor, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Camila and Franklin found themselves caught in a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. The realization that Franklin's clothes and car were nowhere to be found was like a cold slap of reality against their clandestine bubble. Each second stretched, filled with silent questions and the heavy beat of their racing hearts. In the midst of this chaos, Camila's thoughts were a tumultuous sea. The possibility that Max, her husband, might have somehow discovered their secret and reacted by taking Franklin's possessions was a thought too horrifying to fully embrace. Yet, it nagged at her, sending icy tendrils of fear snaking down her spine. This wasn't just about missing items. It was a stark revelation of her vulnerability, a breach in the fortress of lies she had built around her affair. Franklin, on the other hand, struggled to process the reality of his vanished belongings. The idea that they could disappear so mysteriously was a puzzle that his mind turned over and over, looking for missing pieces in a picture that seemed increasingly distorted. The thought that Max could be behind this, seeking retribution in such a personal and invasive manner, was a theory that added layers of complexity to his already troubled thoughts. Their frantic search through the house, their shared look of desperation, spoke volumes of the precarious situation they found themselves in. The veil of secrecy that had shrouded their affair was suddenly lifted, exposing them to a myriad of potential consequences they were ill prepared to face. Camila's phone call to Max's office, meant to shed light on his whereabouts, only served to heighten the sense of unease. On one hand, confirmation of his location could potentially absolve him of involvement in the night's events. On the other, it placed them squarely in the realm of the unknown, forcing them to confront the reality that someone else might have breached their private world. The conversation about how to handle the disappearance of Franklin's car and clothes was fraught with tension. The prospect of involving the police, of fabricating a story that would stand up to scrutiny without revealing their affair, was a daunting one. Every suggested scenario seemed fraught with risk, the potential for their deception to unravel at the seams ever present. Amidst this, Camila's resolution to end the affair added an additional layer of emotional turmoil. The decision, born out of a moment of clarity amidst the chaos, was a bitter pill to swallow. It underscored the fragility of their relationship, a reminder of the impermanent foundation upon which they had built their liaison. As they sat together, enveloped in a silence that was thick with unspoken thoughts and fears, The reality of their situation was undeniable. They were entangled in a web of their own making, each thread a lie, each knot a secret. The path forward was uncertain, a labyrinth of potential pitfalls and consequences. In the end, they were two individuals bound together by a shared secret, now facing the possibility of that secret's exposure. The complexity of their emotions, the uncertainty of their future, hung between them like a spectre, a reminder of the delicate balance between truth and deception. As they contemplated their next move, the weight of their choices loomed large, a testament to the tangled mess they had woven around themselves. After realizing their precarious situation, Camila pondered over the possibility that Max, her husband, could have been the one to take Franklin's belongings in a fit of jealousy. This thought momentarily filled her with dread, yet she also recognized the silver lining that their intruder was merely a thief, not her husband caught in a moment of revenge. Despite the chaos, there was a sense of relief that the situation wasn't as personal as it could have been. They acknowledged their fortune in the face of potential disaster, but knew they couldn't push their luck further. Franklin, caught up in the whirlwind of confusion and concern, mirrored Camila's sentiments. The realization that their secret hadn't been discovered by Max was a small comfort amidst the storm. It prompted them to quickly shift their focus to more immediate concerns, finding something for Franklin to wear. Their search for clothes was comically difficult due to Franklin's significantly larger size compared to Max, making do with what they could find, which included tattered sweatpants and a discolored sweatshirt, both modified to fit. The outfit was far from perfect, comical even, but it served its purpose under the circumstances. Choosing to lay low and bide their time, they turned to the television, seeking a distraction from the morning's upheaval. This moment of calm provided a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded, offering them a brief respite as they pondered their next moves. Meanwhile, Max, driven by a mix of determination and dread, found himself outside Franklin's home, confronted with the reality of his wife's betrayal. His interaction with Molly, Franklin's wife, was charged with tension and disbelief as he presented proof of their spouse's infidelity. The exchange between Max and Molly was fraught with emotion, revealing the depth of their shared pain and the complexity of their situation. Molly's reaction to the photographs, her refusal to view them, yet her acknowledgement of their potential value, underscored the dilemma they faced. They were united in their betrayal, yet divided on how to proceed. Max's offer to keep the photographs as evidence, should Molly need them for a future divorce, highlighted the pragmatic approach they both needed to take. Their conversation, filled with formal introductions and shared grievances, laid the groundwork for a tentative alliance formed out of mutual heartache and the need for resolution. This unfolding drama, marked by moments of unexpected humor and shared understanding, brought them to a crossroads. As they navigated the aftermath of their spouse's affair, Max and Molly found themselves in an uneasy partnership, bound together by the need to confront the reality of their situations and the decisions that lay ahead. Max and Molly found themselves grappling with the weight of the situation, uncertain of their next steps in the wake of their partner's betrayals. Molly's suggestion to return the car, or wait for Franklin, albeit with a humorous undertone, highlighted the absurdity of their predicament. The thought of confronting Franklin, a physically imposing figure, gave Max pause, prompting him to reflect on the potential consequences of such an encounter. Despite the tension, Molly's practical approach to the situation brought a moment of clarity. She revealed that the car was registered in her name, explaining that Franklin had transferred ownership for tax purposes. This revelation opened up new possibilities as Molly offered to issue Max a permit to drive the car legally, providing a semblance of control in the chaotic situation. Molly's concerns about potential break-ins added another layer of urgency to their deliberations. With Franklin's keys and clothes in their possession, they contemplated the risk of him attempting to enter Molly's house. Molly's suggestion to delay Franklin's return until she and the children were safely away provided a temporary reprieve, allowing Max to leave without further complications. As Max departed in the luxurious gold Mercedes, he couldn't help but marvel at the turn of events. Molly's permission slip and her assurances of support offered a glimmer of hope amidst the turmoil. Meanwhile, Franklin's arrival at his own home was fraught with uncertainty as he grappled with the implications of Molly's absence and the missing spare key. Franklin's decision to break into his own house underscored the desperation of his situation. Faced with locked doors and windows, he resorted to brute force, breaking a branch to gain entry. However, his attempts did not go unnoticed as the blaring alarm and the unexpected arrival of the police further complicated matters. Caught in the throes of panic and desperation, Franklin's arrest marked a dramatic turn in the unfolding drama. Despite his attempts to explain himself, he found himself handcuffed and powerless, grappling with the consequences of his actions. The events that transpired served as a stark reminder of the far-reaching implications of infidelity and betrayal. Franklin stood on the precipice of potential disaster, his heart racing as he faced the probing questions of the police officers. The morning sun cast long shadows across the front yard, adding to the surreal atmosphere of the situation. He shifted uncomfortably, acutely aware of his disheveled appearance in the eyes of the law. The officers, clad in their authoritative uniforms, regarded him with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Franklin's attempts to explain the disappearance of his car and belongings felt feeble and inadequate, like trying to stem the tide with bare hands. He struggled to find the right words, his mind a jumble of half-formed excuses and evasive responses. As the interrogation wore on, Franklin's anxiety mounted with each passing moment. The weight of his predicament bore down on him like a leaden cloak, suffocating and oppressive. He cast furtive glances at the patrol car parked nearby, its presence a stark reminder of his vulnerability. Sweat beaded on Franklin's brow despite the cool morning air, his pulse thrumming in his ears like a distant drumbeat. He knew he needed to find a way out of this predicament, but the options seemed limited and fraught with peril. The thought of spending the night in a cold, impersonal jail cell sent a shiver down his spine. Desperation clawed at Franklin's chest as he racked his brain for a solution. He couldn't bear the thought of facing his wife's wrath or explaining his predicament to his colleagues. The humiliation of being caught in such a compromising situation gnawed at his pride, leaving him feeling exposed and vulnerable. Suddenly, a glimmer of hope flickered in Franklin's mind as he remembered his wife's phone number. Perhaps she could vouch for him, provide the alibi he so desperately needed to extricate himself from this mess. With trembling hands, he reached for his phone, his heart pounding in his chest. Meanwhile, Camila's morning unfolded in a haze of worry and uncertainty. Her mind was consumed with thoughts of Max, his absence casting a long shadow over her day. Despite her attempts to focus on her work, her thoughts kept drifting back to him, a nagging sense of unease settling in the pit of her stomach. The unanswered calls to Max's cell phone only heightened Camila's anxiety, each ringtone a stark reminder of his absence. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong, a sense of foreboding that refused to be ignored. When Sheila's call finally came, Camila's heart leaped into her throat, her hand trembling as she answered. The news of Max's recent departure from New York only served to deepen her concern, raising more questions than answers. With a heavy heart, she thanked Sheila and ended the call, her mind racing with worry. In the lawyer's office, Max found himself grappling with a different kind of uncertainty. The sterile surroundings offered little comfort as he poured out his troubles to Anna Reinhardt, his voice tinged with frustration and resignation. With each word, he felt a weight lifting from his shoulders, the act of sharing his burden a small but significant relief. As Anna listened intently, her expression sympathetic yet shrewd, Max felt a glimmer of hope stir within him. Her reassurances and practical advice offered a lifeline in the stormy sea of his marital woes, guiding him towards a path of clarity and resolution. Together, they delved into the intricacies of divorce law, dissecting Max's assets and liabilities with surgical precision. Despite the daunting task ahead, Max felt a sense of empowerment growing within him, a determination to reclaim his independence and forge a new path forward. As the morning wore on, Max found himself buoyed by Anna's expertise and support, his resolve strengthened by her guidance. Though the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, he knew he was not alone in facing them. With Anna by his side, he felt ready to confront whatever lay ahead and emerge stronger on the other side. Max sat in Anna Reinhardt's office, the ticking of the clock echoing in his ears as he absorbed the weight of each word she uttered. The stark reality of his impending divorce settlement unfolded before him, a labyrinth of legal intricacies and emotional turmoil. Anna's office, with its tasteful decor and muted lighting, served as the backdrop to Max's unraveling life. He couldn't help but feel a sense of disorientation, as if he were adrift in a sea of uncertainty with no compass to guide him. As Anna outlined the financial implications of the divorce, Max felt a knot form in the pit of his stomach. The prospect of paying child support for several years loomed over him like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over his already fractured future. The mention of increasing alimony to offset contributions to his retirement account sent a shiver down Max's spine. He couldn't help but wonder how he would navigate the complex web of financial obligations that lay ahead, each one threatening to drag him further into the abyss of despair. The discussion turned to the family home, a place that had once been a sanctuary for Max and his wife. Now, it stood as a symbol of their broken dreams, a testament to the shattered bond that had once held them together. Max's heart ached at the thought of parting ways with the house, each room holding memories of happier times that now felt like distant echoes of the past. The prospect of selling the home filled him with a sense of loss and longing, a bittersweet reminder of all that he stood to lose in the divorce. Despite Anna's assurances and practical advice, Max couldn't shake the feeling of dread that gnawed at him from within. The rapid unraveling of his life left him feeling untethered, his sense of identity slipping through his fingers like grains of sand. As he left Anna's office, Max felt a sense of numbness wash over him, the weight of his impending divorce settling like a heavy burden on his shoulders. The gold Mercedes waiting outside offered little solace, its sleek exterior a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within him. The call to Camila was a last-ditch effort to salvage some semblance of connection amidst the wreckage of their broken relationship. Max's heart raced as he waited for her to answer, the anticipation building with each passing moment. When Camila's voice finally came through the line, Max felt a rush of emotions flood over him like a tidal wave. Despite the pain and uncertainty that lay between them, there was a glimmer of hope in her words, a flicker of possibility in the darkness. As they met at the Center Cafe, Max couldn't help but feel a sense of nostalgia wash over him, the familiar surroundings serving as a poignant reminder of the love they had once shared. Their conversation was fraught with tension, each word laden with the weight of their shared history. As they parted ways, Max couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that settled over him like a heavy cloak. The road ahead was uncertain and fraught with peril, but he knew that he had to find a way to move forward, to chart a new course for himself in the aftermath of his shattered dreams. Camila sat at the Center Cafe, her fingers nervously tapping against the polished wooden table. The atmosphere around her was filled with the murmurs of other patrons, the clinking of dishes, and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine. But within her, there was a deafening silence, broken only by the incessant beating of her own heart. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her trembling hands as she waited for Max to arrive. Each passing moment felt like an eternity, filled with a mounting sense of dread and anticipation. What would he say? How would he react when he learned the truth? When Max finally appeared, Camila's heart skipped a beat. He looked different somehow, older and wearier than she remembered. She felt a pang of guilt as she realized that she was the cause of his suffering, the architect of his pain. "Hi, Max," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for being here." Max's eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw a flicker of something in them. Anger, hurt, betrayal. It was enough to make her flinch, to feel the weight of his gaze bearing down on her like a physical force. They sat in silence for a moment, the tension between them thick and palpable. Camila struggled to find the right words, to convey the depth of her remorse, but they eluded her, like grains of sand slipping through her fingers. "I don't even know how to begin to say how sorry I am," she finally managed to say, her voice trembling with emotion. "Can I ask a few questions?" Max replied, his tone cold and distant. Camila nodded, her throat constricting with fear. She knew that Max had every right to be angry, every reason to despise her for what she had done. And yet, she couldn't help but hope that somewhere beneath his anger there was still a glimmer of forgiveness, a spark of the love they once shared. Max's questions came fast and furious, each one striking at the heart of her guilt and shame. How many men had there been since they got married? What had she seen when she walked into their bedroom? With each question, Camila felt the weight of her mistakes bearing down on her, threatening to crush her beneath their unbearable burden. She tried to answer as honestly as she could, to peel back the layers of deception and denial that had clouded their marriage for so long. But even as she spoke, she knew that her words would never be enough to undo the damage she had caused. She had betrayed Max in the worst possible way, shattered their trust, and destroyed the foundation of their relationship. As Max got up to leave, Camila felt a wave of despair wash over her. She wanted to reach out to him, to beg for his forgiveness, but she knew that it was too late. The damage had been done, irreparable and irreversible. As she watched Max walk away, Camila felt the full weight of her guilt crashing down upon her. She had lost the one person who had ever truly mattered to her, the one man she had ever loved with all her heart. And now, as she sat alone in the empty cafe, tears streaming down her cheeks, Camila knew that she would spend the rest of her days haunted by the ghost of what could have been. Sitting alone in the luxurious interior of the gold Mercedes, Camila felt the full weight of her actions bearing down on her. Each tear that rolled down her cheek was a testament to the profound regret and sorrow that filled her heart. The evening sky outside transitioned from dusk to the deep blue of night, mirroring the darkness enveloping her thoughts. Her emotions, held at bay for so long, finally breached their confines, overwhelming her in waves of grief. The conversation she had earlier in the day with Molly Thompson lingered in her mind, haunting her with its relevance. Molly's advice against viewing the pictures of Franklin's infidelity now seemed like a sage warning, a beacon she had foolishly ignored. Compelled by a mixture of empathy and a need for connection, Camila reached for her phone, her hands shaky with nerves, and dialed Molly's number. The phone rang, each tone echoing in the silent car, until Molly's voice, weary yet resilient, filled the space. "Max, thank you for calling," Molly said, her tone a mix of surprise and cautious relief. "I seem to be holding on. You can keep the car for now. Franklin is in so much trouble that he won't need her for a while." Hearing about Franklin's descent, Camila's heart twisted. Despite her own turmoil, she felt a pang of empathy for Molly, who was navigating the fallout of her husband's actions. But alongside this empathy was a sliver of relief. Relief that the consequences of Franklin's actions were finally catching up to him, perhaps offering Molly a path to reclaiming her agency and peace. Molly detailed Franklin's arrest, his attempt to break into their home, and the subsequent events that led to his downfall. Camila listened, a silent observer to the chaos she had inadvertently played a role in. The mention of Franklin facing assault charges and possibly being attacked in jail sent a shiver down her spine, a grim reminder of how quickly life could spiral out of control. When Molly spoke of her plans to secure a prenuptial agreement and take control of the finances, Camila couldn't help but admire her determination. In the face of betrayal, Molly was taking steps to safeguard her future and that of her children. It was a testament to her strength and resilience, qualities Camila found both inspiring and intimidating. "Keep it up, Molly," Max offered, his voice carrying a mix of support and admiration. "I wish you all the best. And when you need to return the car, just call me." After exchanging a few final words, Camila hung up the phone, the silence in the car now more profound than before. The conversation with Molly had opened her eyes to the ripple effects of her actions, the pain and disruption caused not just in her life, but in the lives of others. Driving back to the motel, Camila was consumed by a sense of isolation and despair. The night around her felt oppressive, a physical manifestation of the loneliness and regret that filled her soul. As she lay in bed, staring into the darkness, she was haunted by thoughts of what she had lost, the love and trust that had once been the foundation of her marriage to Max, now irrevocably damaged. The realization that her actions had altered the course of her life, that she could never undo the harm she had caused, was a bitter pill to swallow. And in the quiet of the night, with nothing but her thoughts for company, Camila mourned the loss of what could have been, the happiness and unity that once defined her family, now a distant memory. Sitting in that gold Mercedes, Camila felt a profound sense of loss washing over her. She realized the enormity of what she might lose: her husband Max, their shared home, and the life they had built together. The thought of Max discovering her betrayal, imagining the scene of her and Franklin together, tormented her. The pain of this realization made her tears flow even more freely. Eventually, a waitress approached, mistaking Camila's distress for a need to visit the restroom. Camila declined and hurriedly left the cafe, heading back to what she still considered her home, despite everything. At home, she found a bottle of gin and drank, not enough to lose consciousness, but too much to think clearly about how to mend things with Max. The alcohol only served to blur her thoughts further, eventually leading her to a restless sleep filled with hopes for an impossible reconciliation. The next morning, Max was waiting in a bistro at 11 a.m. for his daughters, Jane and Joan. He had spent the early hours reviewing and approving the draft for his divorce petition before driving from Charlotte. He pondered how to explain the situation to his daughters. Their meeting started with the usual pleasantries, hugs, questions about school and work, and the ordering and eating of food. But as the plates were cleared away, the real conversation began. Joan was the first to voice their shared concern, noting their father's unwell appearance and fearing the worst. Max hastened to assure them that the bad news was not of a physical nature, but concerned their mother. Jane guessed it was something terrible that their mother had done, half-jokingly suggesting an affair, which brought a brief moment of laughter until they saw their father wasn't sharing in the humour. Max explained, with as much composure as he could muster, that their mother had been unfaithful. This admission led to a poignant moment where all three shared in their grief, with tears freely flowing. Seeking a more private space to continue their conversation, they relocated to a nearby park. Sitting on a bench, surrounded by the tranquility of the park, they delved deeper into the conversation. Max shared the painful details of discovering Camila's infidelity, emphasizing that while their mother had betrayed him, it affected them all deeply. The news was met with more tears as they grappled with the implications for their family. Max stressed the importance of focusing on their education, assuring them that he would support their studies financially, including any potential graduate work. However, he expected them to remain committed to their studies despite the emotional turmoil. The girls, moved by their father's support, reassured him of their dedication to their education and expressed concern for his well-being. The conversation ended with a reaffirmation of their mutual support and love, despite the painful circumstances they found themselves in. Max was left to contemplate his next steps, considering how to move forward not just for himself, but for his daughters, who remained his priority amidst the upheaval. Camila sat alone in her dimly lit Charlotte home, the weight of her mistakes pressing down on her like a heavy blanket. The room felt suffocating. the silence broken only by the faint sound of her own breathing and the distant hum of traffic outside. Her head throbbed. With the remnants of the gin she had consumed the night before, leaving her feeling disoriented and nauseous. As she sat there, hunched over in her chair, Camila's mind was a whirlwind of regret and despair. She replayed the events of the past few days over and over again, each memory a painful reminder of her own folly. The image of Max's devastated face as he confronted her about her infidelity haunted her, his hurt and betrayal etched into every line of his features. With a heavy sigh, Camila dragged herself to her feet, feeling the weight of exhaustion pulling at her limbs. She knew she couldn't stay holed up in her house forever, drowning in self-pity and remorse. Despite the overwhelming urge to crawl back into bed and hide from the world, she forced herself to take action. Slowly, Camila made her way to the bathroom, the harsh fluorescent light stinging her eyes as she flicked on the switch. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, the image that stared back at her a far cry from the confident woman she used to be. Dark circles marred the skin beneath her eyes, her cheeks hollowed from sleepless nights and endless tears. With trembling hands, Camila splashed cold water on her face, the shock of the chill momentarily jolting her out of her daze. She reached for a towel and dabbed at her skin, the rough fabric scratching against her sensitive flesh. Despite her efforts to compose herself, she couldn't shake the sense of emptiness that gnawed at her from within. Feeling slightly more alert, Camila made her way to her bedroom, her steps heavy with fatigue. She rummaged through her closet, searching for something to wear that would shield her from the prying eyes of the world outside. Finally, settling on a simple blouse and jeans, she dressed quickly, each movement a struggle against the heaviness weighing her down. As she made her way downstairs, Camila's thoughts drifted to the events of the previous night, the conversation with her daughters replaying in her mind like a broken record. Their words had cut through her like a knife, their disappointment and disbelief a sharp reminder of the pain she had caused. With a resigned sigh, Camila reached for her purse and keys, her resolve strengthened by the knowledge that she couldn't continue to wallow in self-pity forever. She squared her shoulders and headed towards the door, steeling herself for whatever lay ahead. It was time to face the world, no matter how daunting the prospect seemed. Camila's heart raced as she received the documents from the woman at the door. Her hands trembled slightly as she took the folder, her mind already racing with fearful anticipation of what it might contain. With a polite nod, the woman retreated to her car, leaving Camila standing in the doorway with a sense of dread. She closed the door behind her and made her way to the kitchen table, the weight of the folder feeling heavy in her hands. Sitting down, she took a deep breath before slowly opening it. The first document she saw was titled Petition for Divorce, and her heart sank. It was official, the end of her marriage to Max laid out in black and white before her. Tears welled up in Camila's eyes as she flipped through the pages, each one a painful reminder of the life she had built with Max, now crumbling before her eyes. Memories of their happier moments flashed through her mind, contrasting sharply with the reality of their impending divorce. As she sat there, overwhelmed by a wave of emotions, Camila couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt and regret washing over her. She replayed the events that had led to this moment in her mind, wishing desperately that she could turn back time and undo her mistakes. But deep down, she knew that wasn't possible. The damage had been done, and now she had to face the consequences of her actions. With a heavy heart, Camila accepted the harsh reality of her situation and braced herself for the difficult road ahead. Meanwhile, Max watched as Camila left the ballroom, a pang of sadness tugging at his heart. Despite the hurt and betrayal he felt, he couldn't shake the lingering sense of fondness he still held for her. But as he turned his attention back to the conversation with his friend, he knew that it was time to focus on building a new life for himself, one without Camila by his side.